Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bull and welcome to Bulldrek, the video log where I talk about random things that come to me each week. So this week I'm going to talk a little bit about superhero movies, or superhero TV shows once again. I know I talk about this subject a lot, but I am a big comic book and superhero nerd. Love comics, have for decades and decades since I was a kid. And the fact that we're living in this era where there are just movies and TV shows coming out nonstop is absolutely amazing. It's fantastic. Uncanny even. So it's a great time to be a fan. Of course, you know, being a fan can occasionally get you into trouble. I can't talk superheroes without at least touching on the Juggernaut that just came out this past weekend. That is, well, pretty much the topic of discussion for any nerd. And opinions are very divided on it. And of course that is Batman versus Superman. I personally don't plan to see the movie. I'm not a fan of DC's current take on their film properties, as I've mentioned numerous times. I'm not going to go too far into it. I'm not going to belabor the point. And more importantly, I'm not going to mock the folks that are fans. It's not my cup of tea. I kind of wish it was, or I kind of wish they were making movies for me, but they're not. They've decided they want to go in this specific direction. And obviously people like them because the movies keep making money. So the Nolan/Snyderverse, if it's your cup of tea, you know, that's awesome. But like I said, it's not mine, so I'm not planning to see it. Don't have any interest. I probably won't even bother when it comes out on video. I waited for Man of Steel, and Man of Steel just disappointed me. Like, even worse than my expectations were low, and it exceeded those expectations by going even lower. So I don't expect much out of Batman vs. Superman. I've watched plenty of the critical reviews of it and everything, and it sounds like the movie's kind of a mess, and they just didn't handle it the way it would have been nice to see it handled. But like I said, not for me, but if you enjoy the Nolan Snyderverse, go for it. You'll probably love it. Enjoy. So getting on so going from there to actual DC joy, and in fact it's kind of telling, at least as far as my perspective goes, that in an interview Zack Snyder said that he opted not to cast Grant Gustin, the actor who plays Flash on the Flash TV series. He opted not to cast him for the Justice League and the upcoming Flash movie and everything like that, because he didn't feel like he fit the tone of the series. And if you watch the Flash TV show, the Flash TV show is just, honestly, it's a half an hour of almost joy every single week. The character, I mean, he loves being a superhero. His team loves the fact that he's a superhero. They just have so much fun with it. Even integrating Arrow, which was a more serious tone for the show, you know, it's still a universe where heroes are beacons of hope. They try, or at least they try to be, even when they're occasionally fallible. And while this week's Arrow and Flash were pretty good, I'm not going to talk too much about them because they were good, but they were just episodes. The really big one, though, for this week was Supergirl, who I think I've talked about a little bit on the show, but not, or a little bit on my Bulldreks here, but not too much. And that's because the show is pretty good. It's really not my particular cup of tea. I mean, I enjoy it, don't get me wrong, I watch it every week. I enjoy it, but it doesn't blow me away usually the way it does, the way the other shows do. And I think that's partially because the show I feel the show is geared a little more towards the female demographic. A lot more messages of female empowerment and all that, which is great, don't get me wrong. I think that's the sort of thing we need. But it's also a perspective that I don't... How to say this without sounding like a jerk? It's a perspective that doesn't apply to me. So I don't enjoy it as a form of entertainment as much. Like I said, I have no problem with it. I enjoy the show. I think it's a great message, and I think we need more stuff like that. But it also means that where the show, where Flash is, say Flash and Arrow are 9s and 10s, Supergirl is an 8. That's all I'm saying. Don't take it, the wrong way. That said, this week's episode was just amazing. Just pure awesome. And that was the World's Finest, is what the episode title was. And that was the crossover episode with The Flash. For whatever reason, Flash ends up in... he's been trying to go faster and faster in his own show so that he can fight his current villain, Zoom. And in Supergirl, at the beginning, basically at the beginning of the episode, he finds himself in Supergirl's world, which is one of the alternate Earths from the multiverse theory that they've been playing with. Apparently, he'd been attempting to go faster, and he must have jumped over there. So he ends up teaming up with Supergirl for the episode. And it is just amazing. I mean, they have really good chemistry together, and they are just having so much fun the entire time. I mean, at one point early on, Flash is there with Supergirl, her computer nerd buddy, Wynn, and James Olsen. And Flash is trying to explain that he went fast enough that he jumped Earths. And one of the guys is like, well, you'd have to be ridiculously fast to do that. How can you do that? And Flash is like, well, here, wait a minute. And he zooms out and zooms back in a split second later, and everybody's holding ice cream cones. And just the look, and the best part was the look of just happiness and joy and just like amazement on Melissa Benoist's. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. I'm terrible with these. The actress who plays Supergirl. Her face, she just had this just ridiculously awesome look of just amazement and just happiness and just, holy crap, ice cream, yeah, this is awesome. And everybody else just was like, whoa, that is so cool. And that's the type of thing that I think, and that's what appeals to me for a superhero show. So I'm not going to spoil the rest of the episode. If you haven't seen it, see it. Even if you're not watching Flash, even if you're not watching Supergirl. And you should be watching both. And Arrow. Because they're all awesome. But if you haven't been watching them, even if you haven't been watching them, watch this episode if you can. Because if you're a superhero fan, because it was just... This is what superheroes should be, in my opinion. I just loved it. It was fantastic. So much fun. And now I'm going to kind of warn everybody, because we're going to go into spoiler territory. So I got two more things I want to talk about. One was Daredevil, Season 2, which aired a couple of weeks ago. I kind of wanted to do a video about it last week, and kind of I had some more issues with my computer and recording, so I didn't get a chance to do one, and so I'm doing it this week. But I'm going to but I can't really talk too much about the show without going into spoiler territory. So I'm going to spoil some stuff. So if you haven't seen it yet, you may want to pause the video, close down the video, go finish watching it on Netflix, and then come back. Because it is also ridiculously good, in a very different way. But it is also really, really good. And you should watch it. The other one I'm going to talk about is the season finale of Star Wars Rebels. And again, I can't really talk about the season finale without spoiling things, so I'm going to spoil that as well. but also note that it was really, really good. And Star Wars Rebels is a show I don't think I've talked about on here, but it's another one that if you're not watching it, you really should be if you're a fan of Star Wars at all, because it is just pure Star Wars awesomeness. So, okay, Daredevil. Daredevil was just flat out really fun. I think season 1 was a little bit stronger overall, in part because of the Kingpin. I think it was just a more solid and a stronger season-long arc. Season 2 involved effectively 3 things. It involved Daredevil, it involved Elektra, and it involved the ninjas, the Ninja Clan. And they all end up getting kind of tied up into one another for the most part. But the first 4 episodes are very much, they're just Daredevil. Elektra doesn't show up until the very tail end of episode 4. So the first 4 episodes are just this really amazing, wonderful Punisher arc. One of the best Punisher stories I've ever seen, and I say this as a Punisher fan. I generally am not a big fan of anti-heroes, but I've always liked Punisher's story, because it's understandable. The concept of his family getting killed in front of him by crime, and him basically just snapping and deciding that the law doesn't work. Superheroes aren't working, because criminals are just going to jail, and then they come back out, which, let's face it, is very much the truth, especially in the Marvel Universe. Nobody stays in jail for more than like a minute. So, the Punisher, Frank Castle, basically decides, I've got some skills. In the original, he was a Vietnam vet. In this one, he is I believe it was Afghan / Iraq vet. Did some work as special ops and as a sniper. I will say this, the Punisher is brutal. We're introduced to the Punisher. We don't even see the Punisher. But the introduction to the Punisher is there's this meeting at a Irish bar of basically an Irish gang, the Irish mob. And there's, a couple of, 15, 20 Irish mobsters all gathered together. And then just all of a sudden bullets start just raining through the windows, just destroying everybody, and it is gruesome and bloody, but it's also just really interesting and really cool and just wow. And that's your introduction to the Punisher. And if that's all they had done, I think the Punisher would have been, very one note, which he can be. When done poorly, the Punisher is a terrible character, because he's just the gun type, just shooter guy. I've also found that I think your opinions of Punisher depend a little bit on the era you grew up in as well. And I'm not sure what this really says about me or others that did this, but I also think I have a little bit of a higher tolerance for the Punisher, because I grew up in an era of, movies like Dirty Harry, what was the one with Charles Bronson? Blanking on the name now. I hate this. I really should write stuff down before I do these videos. I'm terrible without a script. So I apologize. But anyways, a lot of those action movies were just, guns blazing, machine guns going crazy, and, the bad guys drop by the dozen. Rambo, pretty much anything with Stallone or Schwarzenegger in them back in the day. And those movies were fueled very much by our fear of crime. When I was a kid, the idea of living in a big city was terrifying, because, you heard all these statistics about, how much crime there was and how much violence there was and all this other stuff. And that really shaped a lot of us, I think, back in the day. So Punisher kind of... And that is coming off of... that was a reflection of the Vietnam era, I think. And it all snowballs in. There's reasons for all of it, and I'm not going to go into it all, because it's not really something I'm versed enough in to really give a speech about. But it all kind of snowballs in. So Punisher's somebody I've always kind of liked, and I can understand because of all that. Well, anyways, but had they just been, Punisher is the gun bunny, I think it would have been very one note and wouldn't have worked nearly that well. However, they really, really go out of their way to make Punisher relatable. There's a fantastic scene that's partially taken from one of the comic books where Punisher has a bad guy that Daredevil, as Matt Murdock, has been trying to protect. Basically, a criminal that decided. In fact, he was a criminal that was at that Irish bar. He managed to survive, got lucky, and he decided he wanted to turn state's evidence and go into witness protection. And he went to Nelson and Murdock as lawyers. And things kind of got out of hand, and eventually Punisher gets his hands on him. And he's got Daredevil chained up to this brick chimney thing on a roof. And he's got a gun duct taped to Punisher's hand, or to Daredevil's hand. And basically he says, "You kill him, or I do." And he's basically like, trying to test Daredevil's resolve. Or he's like, "You kill him, I kill him, or you kill me." And Punisher's been trying to, stop Castle without killing him, because he's basically done. He's hit that, no killing point. So everything just sort of snowballs there. It's a fantastic scene, but there's a real heart-to-heart between the two of them about their differences in philosophy that really make a lot of sense, and basically both of them have an impact on the other. And then there's later on, there's a scene at the end of episode 4 where Daredevil's finally basically beaten the Punisher, and they're sitting in a graveyard. And Daredevil's talking to Punisher, and Punisher basically tells him what happened to him, about his family and his kids dying and everything. And it's one of those scenes. I saw some people comment that it's a scene that they would never have been able to do in either a movie, or at least a modern movie, or on a regular television show, because it's a scene that goes on for like 10 minutes, and it's basically just Punisher talking. And it's a very long scene, but the entire thing is gripping and heartrending. And it was interesting because they said, this is the type of thing you could only get away with on Netflix because there's no commercial breaks to interrupt this. So you're not trying to plan this heartfelt scene around, potential dancing hot dogs or something like that. And it was just a very, very moving scene, and for the purposes of pacing, it would have never worked in like a movie or TV show. And I say modern movie when I say movie, because older movies used to do more stuff like this. But the joke is that we're now living in the MTV generation, which isn't even true anymore. Now it's the Twitter generation, where anything longer than 140 characters is too long for the average attention span. But, and it's kind of true, movies have to move very fast, and otherwise they get critiqued for being slow or boring or whatever. And older movies used to be able to take their time and do stuff more deliberately and a little more casually. But anyways, after that we get into, there's a side arc where they put Punisher on trial, and then Elektra enters the picture. And Elektra is an old girlfriend of Matt Murdock's, and she's trying to mess with him. And honestly, I don't think it worked nearly as well. I didn't like this version of Elektra that much. Elektra's never been a character I've been a huge fan of anyway, so maybe that was it. So, I'm not going to judge too harshly, because I may be, my opinion may be colored by the fact that I've not. Elektra's one of those characters that, she's a Daredevil character, whatever. I know the character, I know her background and history, but I don't, I don't get excited when she shows up in a comic, because she's just a character. She's not somebody I really enjoy reading, per se. So, her arc was kind of and then there's this whole thing with the Ninja Clan, where they're trying to resurrect. It was the Dark Sky or Black Sky or something like that. It was referenced in the first season with Stick. They were trying to, when Stick showed up, he was trying to stop them from doing something. And so in this one, they're trying to resurrect or whatever this Black Sky, and it all ends up being just a little bit, didn't work nearly as well. But there's still some really good fight scenes. There's a lot of really, really good personal stuff. My screensaver just kicked in. I didn't realize it would do that while I was recording. Some real heart-to-heart personal stuff with Foggy and all of those characters, the personal characters, the real the non-superhero characters. And at the end of it, there's this fantastic fight scene where Daredevil and Elektra are fighting off just waves and hordes of ninjas, and then Punisher manages to show up at the very end, and he helps them out, and it was really fantastic. And like I said, I don't have a ton of great stuff to say about the second and third arcs, basically, which is the 4 and 4, because it was 12, 13 episodes, whatever. I don't have anything great to say about them, but they weren't bad. Like I said, it was the Elektra stuff is kind of for me. But I will say there's also a couple of episodes where the Kingpin shows back up. He's in prison, and those are amazing. I really wasn't sold on the character, the actor playing the Kingpin originally, because, you know, I have a very specific image in my mind of what characters look like. And I expect the characters to look like that on screen. It's just, I can't help it. It's very much ingrained into me. And while he does physically, he does a passable Kingpin. He's not physically as imposing as the Kingpin is in my mind, and vocally, he's a very different style of Kingpin, which is unusual. Although he can pull it. Although when he goes into one of his rages, he does much better. But the way he's very quiet and soft-spoken most of the time, Vincent D'Onofrio, that's the actor's name. The way he's very soft-spoken most of the time was really weird for me, because I don't expect that as the Kingpin. But overall, his performance in the first season won me over. I think he did a pretty good job. And so second season, it was, and I think he just does a fantastic job. He's just a fantastic actor, and he ends up carrying the scenes that he's in. So it's really, really well done. If you haven't seen Daredevil Season 2, definitely go see it. And then the final one I want to talk about a little bit real quick is Star Wars Rebels. Like I said, I don't think I've talked about Star Wars Rebels at all. When I was in college, I played a Star Wars campaign, Old West End Games D6 Star Wars. I ran a campaign in our dorms. It started off with just me and a few guys from the dorm. We ended up getting enough guys that we split into 2 groups and eventually 3 groups. And it was a fantastic campaign. We played for about a semester. It was a lot of fun. But the one thing that I've said, and a lot of other people have said since Star Wars Rebels started, was that this was somebody basically took a West End Games campaign and animated it, and that's very much the case. It's a lot of fun. It's lighthearted throughout a lot of it, but it still goes serious sometimes. They do just a fantastic job with characterization. There's some great characters. A lot of just wonderful moments that you just look at and go, that could have come from my gaming table. And over the course of 2 seasons, the show's really built itself up into not only integrating itself into the existing Star Wars mythology, and most importantly, helping to sort of define some of what the original movies, original trilogy canon now is. Because with the whole Legends thing that they're doing, where they basically, because if you're not aware, there was a lot of material written about for Star Wars. That was basically the novels and comic books and all this other stuff that really kind of weighed down the canon of the series. And when Lucas sold off Star Wars to Disney, one of the things Disney did, and I think it was a very smart move, because while some of the there's some bit of the extended universe stuff that was pretty good, a lot of it was pretty terrible. And some of it didn't make sense, and some of it contradicted itself and everything, so... and like I said, there was just a ton of it. So one of the things they did was they basically said, okay, right now, starting at this moment, the only things that are canon are the movies. However, anything published from this point on, anything we do from this point on, will become canon. And so they threw out all the old extended universe stuff, except they didn't, which is the weird part. They threw it out, although they're occasionally bringing stuff back in. They're cherry picking. They're basically going, this was cool. This was a neat design. And you can really see that with the with Rebels, because one of the things they're doing is they're kind of pulling in their ship designs that only ever showed up in some of the old West End Games material. There's characters and stuff. There's the idea of the Imperial Inquisitors, which were Force users, but they weren't full-on Sith, and they were basically used as hunting dogs by Vader to hunt down the remaining Jedi. So rather than facing off against Vader, our Jedi characters are generally being hunted down by these Sith Inquisitors. So it's been really fantastic and really good. They brought back, and this season's brought in Asana Tako from Clone Wars, who was Anakin's, because Clone Wars is considered part of the canon, the Clone Wars animated series. And Asana was Anakin's apprentice. And in the series, I didn't watch all of Clone Wars. At some point, I fell away from it, and I just never got back to it. And it didn't quite grab me as much, so I never really felt the need to go back to it. But Asana apparently kind of wanders away, and she becomes kind of this gray, not gray Jedi, because she's not a Jedi. She's a Force user, but she's not a Jedi, she's not Sith, she's just sort of there. She decides to follow her own path. So, she's been with the group. So in the final episode, it's a two-part. Well, it's basically hour-long / two-part episode, where our Jedi characters, which is Kanan, who is he was an apprentice at the time of the of episode 3. So when all the Jedi Masters were killed, he wasn't a full-on Jedi, and he went into hiding. So he hasn't really used his powers much. There's Ezra, who is a kid. He's, I think, currently 15 or 16. Who's a kid on some backwater planet, who ends up helping out the rebels, the Kanan and his group, and turns out he's got budding Force powers. So Kanan takes him and starts trying to train him. And later on, Ahsoka ends up helping as well. Because Kanan doesn't know all the tricks and wasn't really a full-fledged Jedi of his own accord. And in the final episode, the three of them go to find this, and I'm blanking on the name of the planet now, but it's actually a planet that was from the Knights of the Old Republic series, which was a seat of power for the Sith. Melchior, maybe? I don't remember. So anyways, they go to try to find the Sith temple because they need to find a way to stop the Sith. Because Vader showed up a couple of times now in the second season. And Vader's been fantastic because every time Vader shows up, he is just a force of nature. He basically shows up, throws things around, beats the crap out of everything, and it's all anybody can do to just run like hell and survive. It's just fantastic because Vader just shows up and brrr, he just just destroys everybody. It shows like just this massive difference in power level. And what's great is they keep Vader's style from the original trilogy, which, you know, was nothing. There was nothing elegant about it. He's just all power. He's all just smash with the lightsaber, just beat stuff down, throws things around with force powers, and just overwhelms everybody. So they go to this planet, and they find that there is a Sith Inquisitor on the planet already that's trying to stop them. So they get involved with him. Turns out there ends up being 3 Sith Inquisitors. 2 that they've been tangling with all season long, and then this 3rd one. And there's another reoccurring character coming back, which is Darth Maul. In Clone Wars, Maul showed back up towards the end of the Clone Wars series with cybernetic legs. Somehow or other he had survived, he had cybernetic legs, it was a little silly. Well, now he's older, and he ends up alone with Ezra, the budding young Jedi, who has also got anger issues. Because one of his goals early on was to try to find his parents who went missing. And he found out that the Imperials had captured his parents because they were helping. Basically, they were like broadcasting anti-Imperial propaganda and stuff. And so they had been captured, and so one of the big goals had been trying to rescue them. And when they finally get to the prison planet and they rescue all the prisoners, it turns out his parents have already been killed. So he's got a lot of repressed anger and stuff, and he's frustrated, and he's a kid. I mean, 16-year-old kid. So he ends up alone with Maul, and Maul's helping him out. He doesn't know who Maul is. And basically the entire time he's just tempting him. He's basically just saying, you've got this wellspring of anger, why not use it? You need to use this. It can give you power. There's no harm in using it if you're using it for the right reasons, type of deal. All that whispering in their ear, the little devil in his ear. Everybody else is fighting, and then towards the end of it, Vader shows up, and just all hell breaks loose, and it is brutal. Ahsoka finally finds out, because up until this point she sort of suspected it at one point, but she wasn't sure. She finds out for sure that Anakin is Vader, which, big deal, big revelation. And we're left at the end unsure if she's dead or alive, because she basically stayed behind to try to hold off Vader. You see Vader flying away, but you never see anything with her. So no idea if she survived. The 3 Inquisitors all get killed. I mean, this is a show that's airing on Disney XD, by the way. And, I mean, they're not, obviously not showing people getting chopped in half and blood flying everywhere and everything, but on occasion, characters die in this because it is Star Wars. It is 100% Star Wars, from the music to the action to the cuts to the wipes, the way they handle all the cinematography in it. Even being CG, it's still Star Wars top to bottom. It was an amazing episode. And again, it's another series that if you haven't been watching it, find a way to watch it. Go out, start at season 1 and watch all the way through, because it is just amazing and fantastic. Alright, well, I think that's all the time for me, because we are over the 30-minute mark and I don't want to run too long with this. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Hopefully I've given you guys some good opinions and maybe some ideas of some stuff to watch, or maybe stuff not to watch, as the case may be. Anyways, thank you for watching. This video was made possible by the wonderful, wonderful support of my Patreon backers. I always do that. Patreon. My Patreon backers, my patrons. There's a link down below if you're interested in checking it out. The support of those Patreon Woo! Did it again. The support of my patrons makes it possible for me to do these videos, to do my Let's Plays, and I do some creative writing and stuff as well, game stuff, fiction, whatever, and I post that all up for the patrons to view and browse. So if you're interested in helping support all of that, check that out. Click like, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you. My name is Bull. Have a good one.